A loaded lineup for tonight's episode of Inside the Huddle. I am your host, as always, Lucas Hill. Thank you all for joining in once again on a very, very lovely Wednesday night. We got a lot to talk about. We got more info regarding everything in the Dellinger report, everything that could be expected for not this upcoming season, but for next year in 2026 in college football. We got to talk some Louisiana high school football or high school basketball with our good friend Grant Sasheray over at Crescent City Sports. Also talk some college baseball with Harrison Fant joining us at about an hour and a half. In fact, actually, Grant's going to be coming on in any minute now. He'll be there in just a few. Excited to have him on here. We'll also have our good friend Arlington Lane coming on to talk some college baseball as well. Really excited to get him on the show. So before we start, ladies and gentlemen, everybody do us a favor. Make sure that you like, share, and subscribe for more daily notifications that you get from us here over at Inside the Huddle. Make sure that you join Inside as well. About to post the StreamYard link so that you guys can join in, get your questions answered, get some comments that you guys may have, get some things rolling as we kick off what should be a really, really fun episode. Jam-packed. We're going to go for a little while, guys. I'm just letting you know right now. So sit tight. Let me go knock out a quick break, and I will be right back in just a minute. All right, back from a little break. Let's bring the man in. Chris Sasheray of Crescent City Sports. How you doing tonight, my man?
I'm doing awesome. How about yourself?
I can't complain. I cannot complain. Hey, a big weekend ahead. The final, I think this is what the final regular or final week of the high school boys season, if I'm staying corrected.
Yes, it is. Friday is the Saturday. I think Saturday had play a few games, but Friday, they'll play most of the last games of Friday, and then the bracket reveal will be revealed sometime during the day on Saturday. But as of right now, I think everything's kind of set in stone. As you know, not everyone's playing on Friday too. I believe. I think there's a lot of people who play their games on Monday and Tuesday, because some of the teams have to reschedule the games from the time it snowed down here in Southeast Louisiana.
Are you? What game are you going this Friday? If you're going to any?
I don't know yet. I'm trying to look at the schedule because most of the good games are playing on Monday and Tuesday. But Friday, there's a couple. I think North Shore Slidell should be a good one. It's kind of slim pickings right now because everyone's preparing for the playoffs right now. So
right.
A lot of the games are kind of pick me up games. A lot of the good games were played on Monday and Tuesday.
And Girls March Madness just got released too the other day, didn't they?
Yes, they played their first games tonight, actually.
All right, talk to me a little bit about that as we get into Girls March Madness as they go on the race to get back to Hammond, Louisiana early favorites from what I've heard from some of the guys over at the Hash It Out show and other places like that. Jay Curtis could be heading back. I know Hannon should be a dark horse there. Sacred Heart in Division III. There's just it just feels so wide open this year in girls basketball. Just talk to me about some of the teams that we have in the state of Louisiana that we need to look out for.
Oh yeah, of course you got. I mean, Parkway, Walker, Zachary. All three of those teams are all
Last
fantastic.
year, weren't they?
Oh, what's up?
Walker was there last year, weren't they?
Yeah, Parkway and Walker was the state championship game last year, and that was the game. Remember with I think it was Parkway won on that crazy buzzer beater that was all over Sports Center.
Yes,
that was that game. So both those teams are back. They brought back a lot of players. They're the number 1 and number 2 seeds in Division I non-select, and really Division I non-select is pretty loaded too. You also have, like I said, you also have Zachary's a really good team. Houghton up in the Shreveport area is a very good team. Barb's a really good team, 29-3. Natchitoches Central, 27-4. There's a lot of really good teams in Division I Select, and there's a lot of really good teams in Division I Select as well. John Curtis and Dakar, those are the top 2 teams from the Catholic League. They are the 1 and 2 seed in the Division I Select bracket, and they could very well meet each other up in Hammond for the Division I Select State Championship. So there's a lot of really good teams, and really, and I've noticed this too. I was kind of going through the brackets of the top 10 seeds in Division I Select. 7 of them, I think 6 or 7 of them, are from the New Orleans area, and that's including Ponchatoula as well as it's technically a part of the New Orleans metro area. So you have 7 of the.
It's a part of that New Orleans North Shore area.
Yes.
So let me just ask you this once again. Is the state championship going to have to go through the Catholic League?
Yeah, well, I mean, the number 1 and number 2 seeds are from the Catholic League. So if you beat those teams, I mean, that's basically being the Catholic League. But then Dominican is number 5. Chappelle is number 6. So those are 3. Those are 2 other teams that are from the Catholic League. And then St. Scholastica is a pretty good team. And really, watch out for, if you want to look at a second round matchup, look at that St. Scholastica and Ponchatoula matchup. Those are 2 teams from the same district. They both have an opportunity to go to the quarterfinals. And I really think they could give Carr a run for their money in the quarterfinals. Those are 2 really good teams. So I'm really excited for that second round matchup in terms of girls basketball. There's a lot of really good girls basketball being played right now. I know the big schools get a lot of attention, but you got to pay attention to every single game just because, good basketball is played everywhere, right? Like, I know they may not be the big names like Walker and Parkway or John Curtis or Carr, but, I mean, the great thing about sports is that it's a competition. Anything can happen. Like, Parkway could easily lose in the second round for all I care, right? I mean, it's sports. Anything can happen. You know this, Lucas. You played sports, and of course, you also cover sports. Anything can happen, and just like in girls basketball, boys basketball, football, softball, baseball, badminton, anything can happen. It's sports, man.
You know what's so amazing when I look at Division I non-select, look at Denham Springs and just their history. I mean, girls basketball has always been a fairly dominant sport there. It definitely wouldn't surprise me if they pull a rabbit out of their hat and they make a run to Hammond. I know the schedule there is interesting. If they win, they'll host Slidell. They win that, they go to Parkway. That to me looks like a trap game if you go to all the way to the quarterfinals, just knowing how Denham Springs has been so far this year, especially when you look at their offensive production during the season.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Denham Springs, I mean, they're kind of a good spot. I mean, they should be Prairieville. In the next round, they have to play Slidell, who's a 19. Slidell, that could be a little bit of a tough matchup for Denham Springs. Really, that game could be a toss-up, but I mean, Denham Springs could easily be placed spoiler to Parkway. I mean, Parkway is a great team, but that could easily be a spoiler in the quarterfinals. Like once you get to the quarterfinals, that's where you see those top seeds kind of slip up a bit, just because just because it's you're going against tougher teams now.
And look, they've played already earlier in the season too. But you got to go back and look at when this game was. Going back all the way back to November when they played, and this was a Parkway team that just blew through the regular season as arguably probably the best girls basketball team in the state of Louisiana as of now. I mean, you dominated 50-18 early in the season, but ever since then, this has been a different Denham Springs basketball team.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, this is in the second half. There's always 3 different seasons, and this is something that I know this is kind of a different sport, but Hudson Bowler, the head coach of Catholic football, kind of put it this way. I think this is the best way to explain high school sports in Louisiana. You have a non-district season, a district season, and then the playoffs. Right? Like a team can look like crap in the first quarter of the season, and then by the end of the season, they look like they could be the best team in the state. I mean, so it doesn't surprise me. A team like Denham Springs, got better over. I mean, Denham Springs, like you said, is a program that has always been very good. So for them to get better as the season goes along, that makes sense because that's usually when the good teams become great. And they have an opportunity to be Parkway. I don't think they will be Parkway, but just that's a solid program. I think they're not scared of Parkway, but I expect Parkway to be in Hammond when it's all said and done.
Let's move on to boys basketball. You were in around the New Orleans area for John Curtis and Holy Cross in a thriller, and that was for the Catholic League title. First one that John Curtis has ever won on the hardwood. Just talk to me a little bit about this team and what they have going into the final week of the regular season for the boys basketball program.
Oh, yeah. I mean, John Curtis, which is really surprising that is the last sport that they have not won a district title in. That's how dominant John Curtis has been since they entered the Catholic League in 2015. That's pretty incredible to say that the least. But John Curtis right now, despite winning the Catholic League, they are the 7th. As of right now, they would be the 7th seed if the brackets were released right now. That's where they are in the power ratings. St. Aug, a team that beat them, who also lost twice in the Catholic League, they're the 4th seed. I mean, the Catholic League itself is a very tough district. It's always been. It's one of the toughest districts in the state, regardless of sport, but especially basketball. I mean, St. Aug's at number 4. Curtis is at number 7. Jesuit and Holy Cross are 8 and 9. Rummel has been a team. I would say that. Watch out for Rummel. I mean, they are sitting at 16 and 9, and they're the number 13 team in the power ratings. TJ Dewey and the Raiders have been played spoiler throughout the Catholic League. They beating some teams that where you wouldn't expect to beat them, but then they beat them. Scott Thompson is a really good coach. He won a state championship at Brother Martin over 15 years ago. I think in the last few years ago, he took over the Roman program and really made them a dangerous team in the Catholic League. And although they may not be the best team in the Catholic League, they're always going to play you tough. And they nearly beat they beat Holy Cross. They've beaten Jesuit twice. That's a very good basketball team. That's somebody you should watch out for in terms of a dark horse to kind of go on a Cinderella run in the playoffs. But of course, you got to mention the big 3. I mean, the big 2. Well, they're part of the big 3: Liberty and Catholic. Liberty is 22 and 1. Catholic is 27 and 3. Catholic kind of went on a losing streak, but that's because they play in a tough district. Of course, with Liberty and Central and Zachary, that's a very, very tough district. That might be the best district in the state, in my opinion. Those are the top 2 seasons. The St. Thomas More, Liberty is the defending state champion. St. Thomas More is the defending runner-up. The Cougars of St. Thomas More are number 3. So but then Ponchatoula. So you got Liberty 1, Catholic 2, St. Thomas More 3, St. Aug 4, Ponchatoula 5, and then Ash at 6, Curtis at 7, Jesuit 8, Holy Cross at 9, and Huntington at 10.
Let me ask you this, Grant Sasherick, because we talked about this earlier on the phone. Where in the hell did Central come from? I mean, whenever I was in high school, this was a bottom 5 program in their own district. This was not a good basketball team. Something has clicked since David Semino has gotten there and has turned over as the AD at Central. He has given Scott Osborne, the current head coach there, all the tools that he needs to be successful there, and it's led to the results on the court. They're the number 1 seed in D1 non-select. Really, the only big losses were the other day on Valentine's Day against Liberty, who has always been dominant in basketball. But look at what you've gotten. You've gotten big wins over Madison Prep. You got the big win over Denham Springs to take control of the district at the time being. You've beaten Zachary, who's won multiple state titles in this decade. I don't know how much of a run. How legit is Central going into the postseason?
Well, they are legit. I mean, Central, like you said, has never really been a basketball school. I know they've had some success in football, although they've been kind of a program that's had the talent, but it's never really gone over the hump. And then we've all known about their baseball program, but really with all their sports, and like you said, where has Central come from? It's really just the resources. I remember when Semino was hired, and Dylan Sanders, who I went to school with, I was in the same graduating class with. He worked with Go 24/7 with LSU, and now he's doing a bunch of stuff with MLB, and doing a really good job with that. But when I asked him, because I know he's a Central alum, I was like, how did Central steal David Semino from Catholic? Because he was the head football coach at Catholic Baton Rouge. He said, money, resources. That's what Central's always had, and they've underutilized it. Now with Semino in charge, Semino's like, no, we got all this. We're not winning. All right. And just threw the books at everything. And now you're seeing Central not only invest in his football program, but also his basketball program. Central right now, of course, is the number 1 team according to the power ratings. They're 22-3. They've had wins over Zachary and Catholic, 2 outstanding basketball teams in the state, 2 of the top teams in the state. Their one loss in district play was Liberty, who was the defending state champion. But the fact that we're mentioning them with Liberty says, and also Zachary and Catholic, shows you how fast this Wildcat program has really risen. They are legit. They're the number 1 team in the power ratings for a reason. They're above Zachary and their district rival and who they beat, and then also Denham Springs, who's a solid basketball program as well. They got to prove it in the playoffs, right? I mean, yeah, as great as they are, still got to win the playoffs. The playoffs will start next week. They will have a bye. But, the thing about Central, just like, a lot of teams that kind of come out of nowhere, they have to prove themselves. And the best way to prove yourself is to win. And I think Central can win, but it's a tough road. If the brackets were released today, Central would have to wait the winner of Sulphur and Washington Parish. Both those teams are very good, but they play against a team like Sulphur. Sulphur's established basketball program in the state. If they beat them in the quarterfinals, in the semifinals, you could potentially play one of the top teams in the state. I think Central has a chance to win the state championship, but once again, anything can happen in the sport of basketball, especially in March Madness in the state of Louisiana.
So when you talk about throwing money at different programs, I've heard the rumors, and I know that they're true because I know many other guys that did the same thing. The thing about recruiting is unbelievable, and it works. When you throw money at a program, when you see the success that comes with it, kids are going to want to transfer to other schools. That is what we're seeing nowadays in high school. It's more prevalent now than what people will really realize. It's happening more now, especially in this day and age with the eligibility stuff that's kind of going away by the LHSAA. It hasn't been as strict. And I think that's what's unbelievable about it. because ever since Semino took over, this program has changed. The athletic facilities have changed. There's a lot more money going to the athletics part of what Central should be known for. And that's what I love about what I'm seeing from this program.
Yeah, and like Central in a lot of ways is like Zachary. They have their own school district, so they don't have to rely. They don't have to rely to get stuff from the East Baton Rouge Parish schools system. They have their own school system, so they can do whatever the hell they want with their own money. So Central is really becoming the new Zachary. When you have your own, Zachary has his own type of school district. So when you have that, you're able to throw money in everything. We've all seen how nice Zachary's facilities are. I mean, look at the football field. That is a state-of-the-art football field in my book in terms of what a high school football stadium looks like in Louisiana. That's up there. That rivals West Monroe and some of the schools up there in North Louisiana. But Central is becoming that type of a team. When you and Ray Butler, who runs 14 and up production, says bus. If you care, I forgot what he said, but he said like if you care about your kids, I forgot what he said, but it was something along the lines of if you care about your kids, you would show that you care about your kids. Like you just throw money at it. You care about your school. You care about your community. If you say it's one thing to say it, but you got to show it.
You know what's so cool is that you're talking about a team that last year a 10 seed gets bounced in the first round. Now you got an opportunity to kind of exact revenge because did you say that they had Sulphur and Slidell or was it another team?
It was so it was Sulphur and Washtenaw Parish. And,
okay.
Sulphur's always been a solid program around here in the state.
Let me ask you this: who's a dark horse in your mind that we should be looking at for a state title?
Yeah. So the
actually, let me say this: one in Hammond and one that'll be in Lake Charles.
Okay. Yeah. First, I want to say this: the quote I was looking for is, "You're either supporting your kids or you're not." That's the quote I was looking for. That's what Ray Butler said. Ray Butler, 14 in production. I love that quote too, and that's what kind of best describes Central. But yeah, in terms of Division I and Division II selected, I also want to say there's another team that we're forgetting about. And I'm surprised you haven't asked about them. Shaw. Shaw here in the north.
I've heard a lot from the Hash It Out guys about Shaw. I know they're around the Shaw area. They've been talking about girls and boys basketball being really dominant.
Yeah, so Shaw's an all-boys school, but JB went to Shaw. He's a Shaw guy.
Okay.
His brother is also a member of Shaw's football. He's also part of the coaching staff on Shaw's football team. But he's a big Shaw guy. But Shaw is legit. Shaw has only lost 2 games, I believe, this year. One was to Sophie B. Wright, who's a solid team you should be watching out for in Division III Select. And their only other loss, I believe, was to Liberty. But they beat Catholic and they ran Zachary out of the building. That is another team. That's another top team you should be watching out for. Yeah, they're legit. I mean, they're definitely they're 22-2. They are the number 1 team in Division II Select. But don't forget about Archbishop Hannon. Archbishop Hannon is the number 2 team behind Shaw in Division II Select. They're 18-6, but they're the only team that has beaten Liberty all year. They're a very solid basketball program, and I wouldn't be surprised if both those teams, who are both from the New Orleans area, you will see in the state championship in Lake Charles. But to answer your question about a dark horse team in terms of Division I Select and Division I non-select, like I said, Brummel is a team to kind of watch out for that will play spoiler. I don't know how far they're going to go, but I could definitely see them play spoiler. If they win their first round game against Turlings, they will go up against St. Aug, who is a very familiar opponent. And when you play against another district team, that's always a tough game in the playoffs. And could they knock out St. Aug? They possibly could. You know, we've seen them knock out some teams that are much better. We've seen them beat teams that are much better than Rummel. So I think Rummel has a great shot at being a kind of a dark horse. Maybe not go to to Lake Charles in the semifinals, but they're a team that you definitely need to watch out for in terms of knocking another big time team down. But for Division One non-select, I would in terms of dark horse. I mean, where do I begin? There's a lot of teams that could be kind of a quote unquote dark horse. I guess you could say that. But a team that you need to be watching out for, really, I mean, it could be any of these teams, any like Sulphur and Washington Parish. I think those two teams they've always had outstanding programs. Russin, who's the 7th seed, watch out for them. They were in the semifinals last year. And then also watch out. I'll say this, too. Watch out for Slidell. Slidell, right now, I know they haven't had the best of the season, but they're 19-11. And they can make a run. Slidell's always had a solid basketball program, so I wouldn't be shocked if they kind of beat a team or two down the line that they probably shouldn't beat. That's another team. But I'll also say this too. I know we haven't really talked about. I'll say this: Wassman is a very good team. Wassman is arguably the top team in Division II non-select. Watch out for them. They've always had a solid program. I wouldn't be surprised if they won a state championship. And I also want to give a shout out to Country Day. Country Day 20-6. And I know you're a big time sports guy, Lucas, and of course you're in this business, but the son of Corey Brewer and the son of Deuce McAllister are both on Country Day's basketball team.
In the North Shore area?
No, Country Day's in Metairie. It's in Metairie.
Oh,
that's yeah. Right. Yeah, Country Day.
That makes sense. Dude, around that area would make more sense.
Yeah, KB Brewer. That's Corey Brewer's son. Let me look. I wrote it down. So it was one of the first games I covered. It was
Corey Brewer's part of that freshman class at Florida, wasn't he?
Yes, he was part of he was a two-time He was a two-time.
That's right.
State champion, a two-time national champion of Florida. He was a star player for them. And then Curtis McAllister is the son of former Pro Bowl running back Deuce McAllister, who was a longtime running back for the New Orleans Saints. So they're both. Yep, they're both on Country Day's basketball team, and they're both really good, man. I saw them play against Crescent City. Those are two really, really good basketball players.
Grant Sacheray of Crescent City Sports joining us on Inside the Huddle. Grant, we appreciate your time. Let's go ahead and bring in our other guest today. Host, it's none other than Arlington Lane of the A-Train of the Fuel Sports Network. A-Train, what's happening, brother?
Good evening, gentlemen. How you doing today?
Doing awesome.
Can't complain.
How's
yourself? Everything been on y'all's end, A-Train?
Everything has been great. Especially been doing some big things so far with Fuel Sports Network. Getting ready to incorporate some more things, especially doing website stuff, content creation, and just recently did an interview with NBA insider Brandon Scoop B. Robinson, who's been around the game for almost 30 years, man. So it's excellent right now, and just grateful to be on the program with you guys, talking some Battlehawks football.
Are you going to be at the game in Houston on Friday?
I'm working on that, man. Like, that is definitely something I want to go and experience. I got a chance to experience that in 2023, being at TD-ECU Stadium. But I loved that experience, and I really want to go back again for Friday Night Lights over at the stadium.
We're excited for that. We'll be there in about a month. The countdown begins. I'm bringing a couple of our co-workers from our college over there. They're about to have a blast. Grant, we'll say goodbye to you, my friend. Thank you for joining in once again. Y'all follow Grant Sacheray over on X at Sacheray. Grant, part of Crescent City Sports and many other outlets. Grant, have a great rest of the day and have a great start to the weekend on Friday.
You too. Thanks for having me on, Lucas.
So let's talk some Battlehawks football, Arlington. Good to see you, my friend. Huge offseason that you guys had. A lot of changes. Moving on from A.J. McCarron, which was – he expressed his opinion on it. I don't know if you ever heard of McCready and Siskey, but he went on there and expressed a lot of displeasure, which basically he said this release that he had came out of nowhere. Why do you think that the Battlehawks decided to move on from AJ McCarron and go in a different direction?
Well, I can't really comment too much on it, but from what I know is that there was some conversation between AJ McCarron and Coach Anthony Beck, and the direction that they wanted to go was different. And there was some talk about when things were going to be brought to the table, when it was going to be made public, and so it led to you saw AJ McCarron's anger because of that, and now McCarron's out, and now we're looking for a new quarterback to lead the team going into the 2025 season.
I think what sucks is that Lindsey Scott's gone too, isn't he? No, yeah.
Well, Lindsey off the Roughnecks. Yeah, he's coaching now. Oh, I'm sorry, from Dallas, from the Renegades. Excuse me. Yeah, he left. And you know what? With this Battlehawks team, with the quarterbacks that they have, I know a lot of people were not thrilled with Manny Wilkins. And right now, as we're sitting here on February 19th, this is his job to lose. I know Max Duggan is a name compared to Manny Wilkins, is as a bigger presence than Manny Wilkins. And then Cordero that came in, drafted by the Battlehawks in the UFL draft. Duggan has the presence, he has the bigger name, but Manny Wilkins knows the team, right? And now with the hiring of Seneca Wallace, I think at this rate, it's going to be interesting to see where they go. But I still believe this is Manny Wilkins' team going into 2025.
Let me ask, because I was literally about to ask you about the hire of Seneca Wallace. What's the overall perception of getting a guy like that? He has a lot of NFL experience. The guy is an electric quarterback during his time. Will he have any say in the play calling, or will this just be a position coordinator that he'll be just taking?
I think he's just going to handle the quarterbacks going into this 2025 season. Coach Beck actually went out on social media and brought in Seneca to be the quarterbacks coach, and then he promoted Phil McGogan to be the offensive coordinator, who was the wide receivers coach last season. So at this rate, we're going to see a different look, especially game-wise, from the Battlehawks on the offensive side. And you're getting a coach here. This is his first year as an offensive coordinator at the pro level. He's done it. He did it at the high school level. But here he is in a pro level, and he's going to get the opportunity to showcase what he can do with this receiver core that he does have, and it is stacked.
Yeah, you talk about the receiving core. That was a huge factor for the Battlehawks last year. Even the defensive side of the ball, to me, I thought was the biggest strong point of this team last year. You just got so many takeaways, and this is a defense that was probably a top 3 defense in the UFL last year. I know that there is a lot that this team is bringing back. I think Donnie Abraham is a brilliant defensive mind. I think he has a lot of experience. On the defensive side of the ball, just give an update to everybody who may not have been following along with the Battlehawks. Just talk about the roster overhaul and what you guys bring back in 2025.
Well, from what I have noticed on the roster end, Travis Feeney coming back is huge. And then Peter Tomapino, who in the XFL was a defensive player of the year, coming back again for his second season with the Battlehawks. Chris Payton-Jones, cornerback, who was very, very solid. Bringing back guys like Cameron Kelly, and then adding more to the mix with Miles Sims. And then, those are the core people like Nate Meters and stuff like that. They bring forth a strong presence, especially on the secondary side, and then bringing a guy like Mike Rose at linebacker, who was a dog all season long for the Battlehawks. Those are the core pieces that you got to look at right now going into this 2025 season, and it looks very promising. And that was the great thing about this Battlehawks team, is that the majority of this roster was able to return.
You know, you mentioned a little bit about the receiving core, and I'll say this. I don't think I've seen a receiving core that's better going into this year than what the Battlehawks have. I mean, you're talking about Hakeem Butler, who UFL Offensive Player of the Year last year. He's back for another year after being with the Cincinnati Bengals on the practice squad. You bring in Denzel Mims, who's a former second-round pick, was projected to be a first-rounder. He brings a lot of experience there. I think he might have himself a breakout season. You know, it's funny, A-Train, because I was literally talking to another co-host of yours, Cullen Watkins, the other day, and he talked about this league being a second chance league. And I love what he has to say about that, because it really is at this point. It really is. And that's what the UFL is. That's why the motto of this league is for the love of the game, because the money doesn't really matter at the end of the day. The stats don't really matter. These dudes just want to get another chance to go back to the league, and the fan experience is amazing.
Yeah, it definitely is. It is one thing that the St. Louis fan base love football, and it's another to have a team that can have storied success where they have winning seasons. They're big on that, but they're also big on postseason play. And you know, last season, the game against the Brahmas, it didn't go their way. Well, mind you, they played them a third time. And that's what you're going to have to deal with in this league, is that with an 18 group, you're potentially going to have to play a team 3 times. And third time wasn't the charm for the Battlehawks case. And one of the things that I have learned is third time you have to play even better than you did the 2 times before, no matter what the record was. And in this case, it's still looking strong for this group. It's just that they got outplayed in that title game, and they want to bounce back, and they want to insert themselves into the UFL championship game this upcoming season.
What does a healthy Ja'Cour Pearson bring to this Battlehawks offense?
Oh, he's lightning quick, and you want him on the field every time, because he's a weapon. And what it does, it allows other guys to be a part of the mix, guy like a Blake Jackson into the mix, a Mateo Durant at running back, who had showed some strong promise at the running back position last year. It allows other people to be involved with this offense. And Ja'Cour is going, once he gets the ball, it's going to take a lot to try and stop him. And so the big question still is going to become, who is going to be QB number 1 for the St. Louis Battlehawks. And
do you think it's going to be back and forth?
You know what? I think Beck's going to allow Seneca Wallace to see who's the better of the bunch. Now, if Cordero does get the job, that means Seneca saw it, and so did Coach Beck. If Duggan gets the job, it's same ordeal. But again, I'm still on the bandwagon of Manny Wilkins, because he has had some experience with these guys. He's gotten a chance to be a part of it, even if it was for one game. And I just found it funny that a lot of Battlehawks fans were very dismissive of Manny Wilkins. And I'm like, I remember a couple years back with Nick Tiano. When he was the backup, he came in for AJ McCarron for a game, and he came and showed out. Granted, it wasn't the best of stats, but folks was like, oh my God, let's keep Tiano as starting quarterback. It was like a whole mix. And I'm like, Manny Wilkins, just because he threw 3 interceptions, that was because this was his first game. He was getting an opportunity to see what the game was like. And they gave, just because of those 3 interceptions, people were quickly dismissive of him. I'm like, he's now getting an opportunity to work with the one team, and you're getting the opportunity to see what he can bring to the table. You can see he's a mobile quarterback. He can move out of the pocket. He can run with the best of them. He reminds me a bit of Jordan Teama when he was the quarterback in 2020. So I don't think Battlehawks fans need to be so dismissive of Manny Wilkins so quick. I understand that Max Duggan has a bigger profile, but again, this is Manny Wilkins' team. Until then, unless Wilkins gets hurt or he has a poor performance with this number one team, that's Manny's team now at quarterback.
Do you think that they'll come up with a package for a guy like Max Duggan, kind of like what Arlington did with Lindsey?
It's going to be interesting to see what McKagan does because Gradkowski was full on A.J. McCarron, and now with the new offensive coordinator in the mix, there's a good chance they may change it up just to throw teams off balance. So, again, a lot is out there. We don't know who's going to actually be the final people of the roster, but I'm just going by what we see so far. And as much as I want to sit there and say Max Duggan should be the quarterback of this team, I can't see that.
Definitely is going to be a fun competition as we get closer to the regular season starting, which will be March 28th. So a week from Friday will be a full month before we get into the UFL season. Let's just talk about the UFL as a whole, A-Train, because I talked with Cullen about this yesterday, and it feels like this seems to be a make or break year for the league because I've heard talks about from, you might know him, Southern Charm Sports. We've talked a good bit about the future of the league, saying this could be a team where this could be a league where this could be the last season of the league, how this is a very pivotal one, especially for attendance. We've heard a lot of fan bases and a lot of basically the ticket sales execs at these different franchises are literally calling their fans to say, hey, are you going to the game? How pivotal is it for this year for fans to go to the games for the survival of the league?
Here's my thing on the UFL. The UFL is getting looked at like it's basing it off of its audiences, as in television audiences. And they want somewhere close to 1 million viewers each week. They didn't have it as much last year, but my thing is it can be done because you're bringing back players that are now familiar with their teams. It's now about the marketing ability, and it's about really what you should do is get these players to go out into these different markets to promote the league. I understand you won't have as much time to get prepared for the season. Probably going to be just a month. But like I said, training camp is coming soon. I think within the next week or so, because they got to get ready for the season. But at the same time, you got to get people out there. You got to get the players out there. These are our players. I'm having so many people come to me and saying, I'm tired of the NFL and the junk that they throw out, and I want something different. And that was said even with 2020. And that's why that was special. Reason why I could say that about that 5 years ago, when I say the Battlehawks literally had St. Louis on their shoulders in 2020, it was literally like that. And it's all due, in my opinion, to Kurt Hunzinger, who now part of the National Lacrosse League, how he was able to turn that ship around. Every single week, there was something Battlehawks related to get the people in the community ready to have a pro football team back in town. And I think that's what's being missed here in this incarnation of spring football is the community. That's what brings everything together. And there are supposed to be 2 events here in St. Louis about for the Battlehawk fans, but it's weather. Weather played a big part of it, and they canceled them both. But here's my thing. Hope you keep your foot on the gas as much as possible. You need to keep foot on next, because if you don't, this league is going to expire, and it's going to be nothing but a footnote like it has been in the past. Like, there have been great opportunities here, and that continues to get missed. Like, instantly 2020 had the audience, it had the marketing, the game was yet growing each and every week. Then COVID hit. Then we had to wait 3 years before it came back again. It had to regain the trust of the fans again. And it didn't hit the mark as it should have, but it was still, all 40 games that season was great gameplay. I think about 88% of those games, close to 90%, were competitive. And so that's what you should have built on. And the merger, I think the merger really, it took a big hit for fans because we were just getting ready to understand, to build on this spring football. A little competition don't hurt nobody. That's how I felt about that. And I understand, I hear the cries of those that were in since 2020, even those from 2019 when it was the Alliance of American Football. I hear the cries still. So it's just, it's crazy to me how we've fallen so far from what happened in 2020.
And you talk about getting players involved. That's why PFN is trying to get the name out there for the UFL. It's by getting guys like that on shows like this. It's about promoting the league. It's about going to Radio Row and promoting the league. It's about the CEO. Oh, God dog it. Fullback for the Cowboys. Daryl something. What is his name?
Daryl Johnston. Moose. Daryl Johnston. Yeah, absolutely.
It's about Moose going to Radio Row and telling fans, go to the games. You are having the time of your life. I watched on TV St. Louis Battlehawks games, and I looked at the dome. I looked at what that stadium looked like. The freaking place was unbelievable. I was like, oh my gosh, it was beautiful there. I was like, I want to experience that. That's something that captivates me as a guy who's so interested in spring football. That's something that needs to be shown to other viewers around around the United States. And that's why people are promoting. This needs to happen. Go to the games. And the UFL is already saying that we want to expand and to go to two different cities. They haven't announced who it is yet, but it's going to come very soon. My question is, what are the two teams, and will it even happen if things don't change?
Listen, you know what? Here's my thing about the game plan for the UFL. You got to give me at least 2 to 3 years with these 8 teams because I need something established. You know what I mean? And every year there's some type of inconsistency with this league. And it's like people are seeing what's going on. And it's going to, the people are going to revolt against it if they don't tighten up the ship. If you go online, you can go and read about the jobs that are out there for the UFL.
Yes.
It's public knowledge. Like, people aren't stupid. They want to see this league grow. And like you said, Lucas, it's about growing the league. That's all it's been about. That's why I find it funny that a lot of teams, a lot of people are being very hesitant on allowing their players to come participate. I'm like, we're pushing the league because we want to see them grow. And my honest opinion, I really wished that the UFL did not do anything with the NFL. Seriously. Yeah. Because they're not competing against the NFL. The NFL doesn't want any type of league where they need to pluck from and bring in and plug into their teams. They're getting the low end of the totem pole, whereas the UFL, you can be a star in this league. But again, a lot of moving parts with that. It goes to the fans, it goes to the executives, it goes to the venues, it goes to all of that. And the game itself, if the game works, how come you can't build off that? And the game had worked a lot over the past season. But it's just like it just mind boggles me, sir, that they haven't figured out how to maintain and keep a consistency.
I think that's something that the UFL is going to struggle with. If things don't change this year, the future of the league is in jeopardy. Let's just put that out there. And like you mentioned, the fan interaction is the most important thing that their franchise needs. It's got to happen one way or another. If it doesn't happen this year, you got to find a better marketing strategy, because from what I've heard, when the merger happened, two things happened. You got a league that one was struggling with fan attendance, one was struggling with money, and you brought those two issues together to try and merge them, and now you're kind of struggling with the same thing. Please correct me if I'm wrong if that's the case.
You're not wrong at all, Lucas. That has been the main thing here. And when you look at leagues like the CFL, when you look at the European League of Football, how in the world, sir, is the European League of Football able to have the amount of success that they're having? And they're doing it with way better crowds. This is American football overseas, and they're doing well with consistency, with marketing. They are doing fantastic. Even in their platform is streaming in the States. That's it. Yet they have a core audience, and they're doing well. That they're continuing to grow each and every year. Why are not our executives looking into that? You wonder why the CFL continues to operate, right? And it's amazing to me that this league, and you can sit here, I'm saying I'm downing the league. No, we're being truth tellers about what we see. That's the big thing here. And we sit there, we say we can bitch, we complain, but if you're giving us reason to. That's my thing. You're giving us reason to do that.
A-Train, legacy media hates me. And I'll tell you why. I got in trouble with the freaking Saints because I was a truth teller about them. They banned me from being a media member for their games. Kid you not. I pissed off the communications department there. And they went to our director and said, he can't come to the games. Because I told the truth about what was going on in that franchise. That I told them that some of these media members that are there are so objective, and they're looking just for a drama alert to happen. Like it's a freaking Killer Keemstar news broadcast. It made me so laugh with the amount of questions that they were asking. It just felt like I was on an ETV press conference instead of a football press conference. I was like, are we going to get to something football related? I know this team is bad and all, but we can at least talk about the football aspect instead of, oh, what's going to happen on this episode of drama inside the Saints or drama inside this organization. That is what has happened in the world of media. That's why legacy media hates me. That's why they hate us doing things like this, is because we tell the truth. They don't like our takes, but guess what? We do what we do. That's why I got a lot of media members around the state of Louisiana that are hated by other organizations because they tell the straight truth. And we got to tell the truth about the UFL. It's struggling. It has struggled for the last year and a half. It is going to continue to struggle if they keep up with these same deals. You got to come up with better marketing strategy to promote the league. That is what they have failed to do for the last year and a half. That energy drink that The Rock created to get the UFL name out there, who the hell is buying that?
Listen, it's a one-of-a-kind thing, but at the same time, what's been missed is the fact that where is Dwayne The Rock Johnson? If you've been making this push for guys,
all I've heard is Moose talk about the league. Where's The Rock been? He ain't been making any good movies recently.
Exactly. And I'm sitting back and I'm just watching the drama unfold. Like, I hear something come out every single time. And but big ups to those that are keeping their eyes on everything that's going on in alternative football. Guys like Mike Mitchell, guys like James Larson, guys like Greg Parks, right? Guys like Reed Johnson. Guys like you, Lucas, you continue to do this and you fight in a good fight for those that are out there and wanting to know what in the hell is going on.
We gotta know.
And you can't smooth it out like peanut butter to make you think that everything is just okie doke. It's not. And fans are all seeing it. Like, listen, I have nothing against Birmingham's franchise, the Stallions.
No.
That losing Zach Potter is huge, right? He lost in Sacramento State University. We had Jose Jefferson on our show a few weeks back, and he talked about the landscape of what's going on right now. And it's not the best. And that's what's making it so hard for those that want to be a part of it to stay a part of it. It makes it hard. Your girlfriend keeps cheating on you, and you're like, but I still love you. I still love you, man. Like, come on. Like, I need you to still be here with me, man. You know what I'm saying? Look, come on, dude. What are we doing here? It's like the girl is like, she cheats on you every day, but you still love the girl. That's how we feel about the UFL. Like, we get cheated on, but we still want you to succeed. It's hard.
Yes.
Hard.
Literally, last year was the first time I ever went to a UFL game in person. I had watched the league and was very interested in it. I didn't start covering it heavily until the beginning of this year. I was so involved with trying to get the UFL's name out there. Arlington, I have been podcasting for we'll be going on 2 years. I literally just started this thing. I'm new to the game still. I literally started live shows. What month are we in? We're in February.
We're in February now, yeah.
December, November. 4 months ago. I started this thing 4 months ago, A-Train. But the response I've gotten from UFL fans talking about the league and just promoting it has been overwhelming. I've had UFL fans flood my DMs with questions, with comments, with just thank you notes that I've gotten from them. Just saying, thank you for spreading the word. It's about time somebody outside of the usual suspects like yourself, like James Larson, and the rest of the guys at the UFL PFN newsroom, and the guys at United Football Media that have talked about the league. And that's what is to be needed. You have to get outside noise involved, and you have to get other guys involved. It can't just be a short period of time where spring football is the main thing from the end of February to the UFL championship game in June. It has to be a year-round thing where you talk about that. There's something that's always to be talked about. That's what the guys at PFN do.
When in 23, or better yet, in 23 and 2020, they had the best idea was to keep going after the Super Bowl. Another week. And this is the crazy thing. What was that? 2023, we had XFL February to April, USFL April to June, college football right after that, NFL right after that. We literally had a year.
It was perfect.
Football.
I think, in my opinion, the merger should have never happened. Because you're just correlating two problems together.
And what's mind-boggling with that is that the name Brian Woods always sticks out to me. And the reason why I use Brian Woods was the person that brought back the USFL. And don't get me wrong, he did what he's supposed to do, and then he got out of there. He got out quick. But when you give a guy like Brian Woods out there, he just seems to mess things up a bit. You know, he had the one thing I would say he had that was very successful was the TSL, the Spring League.
Yeah.
The Spring League
TSL was a lot of fun.
Good. It was good. And I will give him credit for that. But any other thing that he tried to do, I didn't want nothing to do with. But he was able to get the USFL out there. And now the USFL, at least name-wise, they're going into their 4th season. Whereas the XFL is going into their 3rd. And then we get this UFL thing in its 2nd year. But year 2, because it's supposed to have been seriously a 3-year plan, especially if we go back to 2020. We go back to 2020, it was supposed to have been 3 years for that league to be successful. Vince McMahon put it out there. If you really paid attention, Vince McMahon stayed out the way. He allowed the football people to do the football job. The only time you seen him during that 2020 year was the announcement of the league and when the cities were announced. After that, he went back to go focus on WWE. That's kind of where I am with this UFL stuff. Granted, you went and got football people, but something just ain't clicking with these football people to make this league a success. Something just ain't clicking. And I'm trying to, it's been mind-boggling me for the last couple of years now. What does it need to click to say this is how we should have spring football and it can continue? I implore you guys to always check in about the USFL back in the 80s. I implore you to read that story.
There's a 30 for 30 about it.
Exactly. There's a book about it by Jeff Pearlman. There's a book about it. That's the thing. I would love to truly learn about David Dixon, the person that was behind this, and how it could have worked. I'm like, what pieces did they take to try and make this spring league work now? And they didn't. I think the one thing that they messed up on because they were afraid that it wasn't going to work was getting ownership. It's ownership with big, high billionaires and millionaires, because the problem was these billionaires were not going to believe in the product or invest in it. And that's crazy to me.
Yep, absolutely.
They said it's not worth their time.
Yeah.
So they had to cover all the expenses and say, hey, we're going to keep it league. It's going to be us. We're just going to own the league. And then hopefully somebody will invest in it down the line. Something's got to change it. That's how I look at it.
Do you think it needs a change in upfront personnel wise? Like, does Moose need to go? Like, what needs to change for the league?
I don't know anymore. I don't know. I have lost out on what needs to be done to change it. Moose is a football guy. Moose has done it. He was in the XFL 2020.
Yeah.
You know, he was the GM for the Dallas Renegades, you know, and then he took over the USFL. So I don't know. Russ Brandon is over it now. He was over the XFL in 2023. It's definitely an optics thing. Like, optics got to be key. Like, I will applaud the UFL for what they're doing broadcasting wise, especially on ESPN. I'm very curious what they're going to do with the Fox side of things.
Right.
It hasn't been announced yet, but I'm curious to see how that was going to do. Because what could happen is similar to what happened in 2020. Like, when I say Fox on XFL on Fox was something to see, that was something. XFL on ABC, ESPN, that was something. those network games were amazing.
Those night games were awesome.
And not to mention, Lucas, have you ever watched FS2 before?
I do.
Did you know that the highest rated thing on FS2 was an XFL game?
I did not. But I can see why. Because FS2, you've got horse racing, you've got soccer, you've got some little baseball games. What are people going to watch? Why not watch a pro league?
Exactly. So I'm like, I just never understood why they didn't build off of that. Never understood that. And I got a whole show about this tomorrow. Whole show about
that. We just gave the audience, you just gave your audience basically what you're going to cover tomorrow. Let me ask you this. Could Will Lewis evolve into a higher up position? I mean, this is a guy that is USFL defined. He's a former gambler, played there from 84 to 85. He's been in other leagues. He's been in the CFL for a while, was with the Denver Gold initially in the USFL, goes to Memphis, the Express initially during the Alliance, then was a Houston Roughneck as pro personnel, was in the UFL with San Antonio. Then now he's the new GM for the Roughnecks. Do you think it's going to be a while? If the league is to continue, do you think Lewis could evolve himself into a higher up position? Because if there's anybody that can help promote the league, I think Lewis has got to be the guy.
I look at it like this. Compared to what the Roughnecks did in 2024, I think his focus needs to stay right there in Houston. Get that team together. Get that back to prominence again. And I think they'll be fine.
Right. I'm not saying right now, but I'm saying for the future of the league. If the league is to continue in the future, do you think he would be the guy?
It's going to, in this case, it's going to depend on what Houston does this season. It's going to depend a lot on what they do this year. If they're able to have a winning record, if they're able to push past the Michigan Panthers, because right now nobody can beat the Birmingham Stallions. And until that happens,
not with Magoo back either.
Exactly, right? This is Birmingham's league. And until that is the case, I don't see Will going anywhere different until somebody knock off Birmingham. You know, Houston wants to do it more than anything. And Memphis getting Ken Wisenhunt, that's going to be something to see too. That's going to be something to see too. We had TJ Bernieri on the show a couple weeks back too, 2-3 weeks ago. And he's very excited. Don't get me wrong. I love John DeFilippo. Love the guy.
He popped off at me during a press conference.
He ain't Ken Wisenhunt.
I don't know if you saw the video or not, A-Train. There was a video whenever I asked Flip a question. He said 12 attempts for 15 yards. Would you keep rushing? He said, next question. That was me. But I love Flip at the bottom of the line. But I think Wisenhunt is a hell of an offensive mind. He was with the Pittsburgh Steelers. You're getting to take control of a young offense. I think that genius is going to really help himself and put Memphis in a much better position than they were with Flip.
Especially having quarterbacks like Quentin Normandy coming in over from San Antonio. Like, your quarterback room is way different than it was a year ago. And I'm very curious to see what that squad was like. I'm going to make a trip to Memphis for one of those games because I want to see that Wisenhunt team together. You know, I want to see what they put out and how well they can mesh in a quick amount of time. Because remember, let's not forget, Ken Wisenhunt has taken a team to a Super Bowl. So it's going to be interesting to see what that mindset is going into this new season.
And on that Super Bowl team that he took, that was an old squad. You had an aging Kurt Warner, Sure, your receiving core was young with Fitzgerald still at the helm, and you had an excellent defense as well. But I think that this could be a much better situation that he's in because generally the league of UFL, you're getting 25 to 30-year-olds. So it's a fairly young roster, not a bunch of old heads like you see in the NFL. You're not getting 31, 32, 33-year-olds on a UFL roster. I can promise you that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just good to see majority of these players come back. I think that should be the build right there. The majority of players that are either signed with new teams that are returning to the league or the players that just actually return to their same teams. So that's where I think that this league can build on and build around those players. I hope they do that.
The league begins Friday, March 28th. Friday Night Lights between the Houston Roughnecks, the St. Louis Battlehawks.
Two of my favorite teams.
Battlehawks are a favorite to make it back to the UFL to make it to the UFL championship, the first one that they would have. It would be their second title overall if they are to win it all this year. None other than our good friend Arlington Lane joining us once again, covering all things UFL, Battlehawks, and Roughnecks. A-Train, it's been a pleasure having you, my friend. Tell the audience where we can find you. I know that we got a good bit of them tuning into the show right now.
The A-Train Show. You can follow me on X there. You can follow the X-Fan Show. And always check out Fuel Sports Network at Fuel Sports Net on X. FuelSportsNetwork.com too.
Hey, let me ask you a question before we let you go because I know you're into wrestling. How you feeling about WrestleMania 41 coming to New Orleans?
42?
42. Thank you.
I'm for it. You know what I mean? There's always big moments that happen in New Orleans, and that is always a good place to have a WrestleMania, especially down at the Superdome. And I'm for it. I'm looking forward to this one coming up in Vegas, and the timing of it is literally 2 months away, like legitimately 2 months away for it. And New Orleans is always a special place in WWE's heart, and they've had some of the biggest moments in WrestleMania history. Let's not forget how the Yes Movement was so big at WrestleMania 30. And so, and it's crazy to even think how it was 11 years ago when the Yes Movement jumped off like that. So, and I'm older now, as you can see, man. You can see I got my white hair and whatnot, man. So,
come on now.
Listen, losing hair and whatnot, man.
Oh my goodness, are you jealous?
A little bit. I want some, man.
Oh Lordy. A-Train, it's been a pleasure having you on, my friend. Have a great rest of the day, and we'll catch you hopefully in about a month.
Yes, sir. Thank you, man.
Oh, no problem at all, my man. Arlington Lane of the Fuel Sports Network joining us once again here on Inside the Huddle. Been a pleasure talking to him as usual. Always a great pleasure when we get to talk with him. All right. Got about 10 minutes. We got our good friend Harrison Fant coming on in just a little bit. But before we continue, I want to talk about what we have to with the college football playoff. And I pointed out a couple of things that happened over the weekend. First of all, this is from Ross Dellinger. The SEC and the Big Ten are building momentum to further expand the college football playoff to 14 or 16 teams. Last offseason, leaders of the Big Ten and the SEC threatened to create their own postseason system if they were not granted a majority of college football playoff revenue and full authority over the playoff format. Ladies and gentlemen, you are now looking at the new college football at this moment where the SEC and the Big Ten now control majority of the postseason. They control college football at the moment. And guess what? There's nothing that you can do about it if you're the Big 12 and the ACC unless you do something to change. And look, I have nothing but love and respect for both respective conferences. But I think at the same time, guys, you got to be real. You got to be real about this. And you have to realize that this is what is going to come in 2026. We are going to have expanded playoff. And it is exciting that we get to see this. There are going to be multiple AQs per league, as many as 4 for themselves, and finalize a scheduling format where they can play each other. And the SEC has 9 teams in conference play. All 4 power leagues, by the way, will overhaul their conference championship weekend, all according to our good friend Ross Dellinger of Yahoo Sports. According to this, the SEC and the Big Ten hold sole discretion on the future of college football. Like I mentioned already, this is the new world of college football we're living in. Whether you like it or not, this is exactly what is going to happen. This is exactly what we told you was going to happen because of history. If the college football playoff format would have been different 20 years ago, we would not be talking about this. We would have more diversity in the playoff. But that's not the case anymore. You have to realize that because of recent history, since 2005, the SEC or Big Ten has represented the college football playoff / BCS in the national championship, or has represented their respective conference in the college football playoff / BCS natty. And I say 2005 because in this scenario, we're counting Texas as SEC, even though they were in the Big 12 in 2005. But if we want to be picky, we'll just say 2006. But either or, you get my point. History backs up my claim. History backs up everything I'm telling you. Is that because of this is why change is happening right now. So with this, the 14 or 16 team model would grant 4 AQs to each of the 4 highest ranked teams in the SEC and the Big Ten, and then 2 to the ACC and the Big 12. Folks, let me just tell you why this is the case. If you're right now, leave a comment and think of one team, at least one team from the ACC or Big 12 that in 2025 can legitimately make a run to the college football playoff. And look, I'll give you guys about 30 seconds. Go ahead. I'm waiting. I'll wait. I got the timer right here. Go ahead. Go ahead. For real. You think I'm lying? Go ahead. Type in the comments. I don't care. Please do. I would like to know. I'm being so for real. Please let me know. All right, 10 more seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, I see no comments. So you know what that means? Either there's nobody either here or actually we have no really consistent viewers, or you just can't name one. You can't. I'll give a few out there. Arizona State, you could say, but what are they going to be as an offense this year? They couldn't hold Ohio. They'd get blown out by Ohio State. They'd get blown out by Oregon. They would get blown out by Penn State. They get blown out by about majority of the SEC. If Texas plays a complete game like they lack to do in big-time games against LSU with what their offense is going to bring in 2025, with Alabama, and with Georgia. And I'll throw in some other teams. I'll throw in Florida there. I'll throw in Vanderbilt even. I know it's a far stretch, but that's the truth. Mississippi State hung around with Arizona State. My gosh, I mean, what more can you ask for? You cannot legitimately name a team that can hang around with most of the SEC and most of the ACC, or most of the Big Ten. And that is just the straight truth. Whether you like it or not, that is the truth. And because of that, that's why you're seeing this come into fruition. That is exactly why we're seeing this. And you can sit here and say, well, I don't like it. I don't care. What are you going to do? Stop us. So I say all this, and we'll get into it a little bit. Who up from the ACC and the Big Ten and the Big 12? Bottom line, who can make it? None of them, because they don't have the same history. They don't have the same recruiting schemes. They can't compete with those two major powerhouses in the Big Ten and the SEC. This is what the 14-team playoff would look like. So it would be a 4x4 by 2x2 by 1+1. It's a model in which the top two seeds would receive first-round buys. But there would be no buys in a 16-team structure. Good. But I think this is my favorite part about this, is that the college football playoff selection committee's say in this is greatly diminished. Fantastic. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Because I'm tired of having to deal with them. And I'm sick of having to deal with this. I'm sick of having to deal with CFP. Officials determine seedings and determine rankings. Guess what? Done. The committee, its future, also controlled by the SEC, would presumably seed 1 through 14 or 16 based directly on the top 25. Only the top 25. It's not anything that, with all these crazy reseedings, and it's going to have to be something crazy like that. So I don't know, man. It's a lot that we'll just have to see. All right, my boy Reed Cooper. Notre Dame is going to have to join the Big Ten. Okay, so because of their scheduling, the way they do, you could essentially say they are, especially this year, because I'm looking at it now. I'm looking at their schedule. They play basically majority of the time Big Ten teams. You play Stanford. Well, you could say they're kind of a mix of ACC and a mix of Big Ten. You play USC. You play Purdue. I know they're not much of anything, but still, it's Big Ten country. You play Boston College. You play Pitt. You play Syracuse. So I'll give them this. It's a hell of a lot better schedule than you had last year, especially non-conference play. When you go to Miami, you play Texas A&M again, and then you go to Fayetteville and go play Arkansas. I'm not sure what Arkansas is going to do with Taylor Green back. Can he get some consistency there? But regardless, I don't think that Notre Dame will have to join the Big Ten. They're going to still be an independent. I don't know why they've been an independent. I don't know why they don't want to join another conference. I guess it's just because of the clause they have in the contract or whatnot that belongs them to the independent, but whatnot. Here's what everybody feels. So here's what ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips says, is that the ACC is not cemented on a position, on a format, but there needs to be fairness and access to the championship. It needs to be a true championship, not artificial and not invitational. That's an interesting one there, because didn't we see a good bit of that last year? I don't know, man. It's a lot that, look, we'll just have to see what happens with this one. Let's bring him. Harrison Fan, SEC baseball analyst with SEC Unfiltered, joining us inside the huddle. Harrison, I'm literally just talking to my viewers about the Dellinger report. We might as well just call this, we might as well have a Wikipedia page on all the craziness that Ross Dellinger has brought up, especially with this 14 through 16 team playoff that we're going to see in 2026. How are you this evening, my brother? How are you?
Doing good. Just getting ready prime for some baseball this weekend. Getting content rolling with that. And I mean, I've been seeing it all over my timeline too. Just the updates and things that he's been putting out on, I think, all facets, it feels like, of the sports that we're intertwined with.
He's been on a freaking tear recently. And the biggest thing that involves this is revenue sharing with the TV deals and with NIL being a factor, with 9 conference games now being proposed. That means that more players are going to want to play in these games. And every time they appear, I'm going to get a nice little cut off of what ESPN or whatever network gives me for my appearance on these games and for participating in this. Well, let's talk college baseball. Harrison, opening weekend was this past weekend. I know we didn't really get to see a lot throughout the weekend, but I'll say this on my side around the Baton Rouge area. This LSU pitching room is insane. There's just so much talent. And from what I heard from one of our guys with the Jordy Collada show, 81 total innings, I want to say, 45 strikeouts. Just talk to me about that and just overall what you saw from LSU's bullpen, from how they performed against Purdue, Fort Wayne, and then let's get into some more around college baseball.
Yeah, no, I mean, LSU kind of did what they were supposed to do. They took care of business, right? I mean, it's opening weekend. You're playing Purdue, Fort Wayne. I mean, what did you expect to happen? But the pitching staff really has been dominant. And it's been really cool to see, especially, being a pitcher myself. But, I mean, Cade Anderson, Anthony Ianson, the transfer mid-major, and then Chase Shores. I mean, all three of them have shoved in their starts. They all went 5 innings. None of them gave up more than 4 hits. And they all had 6, 7, and 8 strikeouts. I mean, I thought of the 3 I was really the most impressed with, Lucas, was Cade Anderson on Friday. I just thought his stuff was electric. I thought it was really cool to watch him pitch. I mean, I think he's a really talented guy, and he's going to have a lot of success in the SEC. I just thought the stuff from him, I mean, was really, really fun to watch. I mean, he's got that mid-90s fastball, right? He's got that hammer curveball, and he's got a slider that it seems like he kind of can manipulate the shape a bit, make it more of like a power cutter or a slider. And I mean, he didn't really have to use much of the changeup really at all. But no. I really enjoy watching him pitch. I think Anthony Ianson, he's got really good stuff too as well. But it was really frustrating in a good way that how easy it felt like he was throwing mid-90s. I hate when guys do that because I was never able to do that, But I mean, they have a really good, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It looks like so far. Obviously, it's non-SEC play yet, but Cade Anderson, Anthony Ianson, and Chase Shores, the Friday, Saturday, Sunday starters, have elite stuff that's going to play well in the SEC. I'm excited to see when it comes that time how they face against SEC lineups, Lucas.
And from what I've heard around LSU country is that this is something that LSU has struggled with. You looked at last year against VMI in opening weekend. They had their struggles in opening weekend. This year looked a lot cleaner, and they did what they were supposed to do. That was the rhetoric that was told throughout all of opening weekend was they did what they were supposed to do. And that's what LSU had lacked, especially last year. And it set the tone for what was a pretty rough slate in SEC play. But overall, when you look at the entirety of the SEC, just give us some pointers and just some overall top performers, guys that stood out during opening weekend around the SEC.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of talent, honestly. I mean, it's the SEC. There's going to be the most talent everywhere in top to bottom of any conference, I think, in college baseball. I think the ACC comes close at the top of the talent, the teams, but I think the SEC is just deeper at the top, deeper at the middle, and deeper throughout, right? I mean, we can go across the board, honestly. I mean, I think Florida, you want to talk about teams, I think flying under the radar as a top team is Florida, the Gators, led by a coach that it's odd how much he goes to Omaha. Kevin O'Sullivan has been to Omaha more times leading the Gators than he has missed going to Omaha, if you can believe that, Lucas. I mean, I talked about it preseason, how hard it is for, to go to Omaha, let alone, get back there, especially with the gauntlet the SEC is. But Florida is just so stacked this year, Lucas, top to bottom, 1 through 9, with the ability to hit for power, and hit for average as well. But then you look at the starters that they have. I mean, Liam Peterson has made an unbelievably massive jump visually, but also it feels like stuff-wise on the mound in Friday starter. And just he has elite ace Friday night stuff, it looks like. I mean, then behind them, what they have as well. I mean, you got Pierce Capella, and I can't remember who's in the Sunday role, if they're going to continue to play with that. But, I mean, they have elite stuff there. I think it's Jake Clemente, actually. But just they have stuff that's going to dice up SEC lineups. And I don't even say that lightly. But then you have a team in offense like they have. They're not going to be out of any game that they play in with how much they can mash. Unlike a Vanderbilt team who's very highly ranked. I mean, they're 15th in country. And I think the struggles in offense are very concerning. Just when you take out, I talked about Chris about this leading into the season. If you take out the JMU transfer they have, they only had one guy hit double-digit home runs. Florida was probably going to have 5 guys hit at least double-digit home runs. I mean, then you talk about power. Another SEC school comes to mind immediately, and that's Tennessee, Lucas. Tennessee, the lineup that they have and the pieces they've added this year. I mean, Anthony Fisher, Ole Miss transfer. You have Gavin Kylan, just another stud. Dalton Bargo. He had 2 home runs in the first inning of their midweek game. He had a home run and then a grand slam. He had 5 RBIs, 2 home runs, one of them a grand slam in 1 inning. He's the 3rd ever Tennessee Volunteer to do that, to have 2 home runs in the same inning. I mean, then that's not even mentioning Hunter Hensley, the talent that they have there. I mean, I think it's so deep at a school like Tennessee as well. And they're replacing pieces like Christian Moore, Blake Burke, right? Those guys. And they're replacing a lot of pieces on the mound too. But when I was up there in Knoxville opening week and watching, the freshmen that they have, the newcomers they have coming in are unbelievable. They're so talented. I mean, we have Levi Clark, a freshman who went to my high school here in a local area of Marietta, Georgia. And I mean, his first at bat was he had a triple, and he was a triple shot of the cycle. His first game is starting, and he had a home run in his first game that he started. I mean, that's called stepping up in the ready to play. And Tennessee is just full of guys that can do that. I mean, they put up 29 runs in their midweek game. I know it's midweek, but it means a lot of guys are hitting and getting on base, right? I mean, just the talent on the SEC, that A&M, Texas A&M, the number 1 team in the nation. I mean, how could I, go this long without mentioning them? They have the most deep and well-rounded team preseason coming in of any school. And that's replacing, 2 major pieces in the bullpen of Evan Oschenbeck, their elite closer. And then Chris Cortez, who has, I think, the grossest stuff last year of any player in college baseball. I talked to a scout last year. I was watching it in SEC tournament in Hoover, and said, this is big league stuff that would play in the big leagues right now. I mean, but then you have Ryan Prager who comes back, and then you have the lineup that they have with Jace Lavalette, the number 1 player in college baseball, Gavin Grohovac, the freshman of the year. I mean, and him breaking Jace's freshman home run record at Texas A&M a year after Jace broke it. That lasted for like 20, 30 years, right? But then you have guys like Gavin Cash you bring in from Texas Tech and just studs up and down the lineup. I mean, the talent for A&M is so deep and the expectations are so high, Lucas. I mean, their opening game, I don't know if you watched it, it was honestly a pretty close fight and a close battle with Elon. And Elon had a stud throwing the mound. I don't expect that guy to be playing at Elon next year if he has any eligibility left. I expect him to be scooped up by an SEC school. So be on the lookout for that. But I mean, Michael Early, we were wondering what his tenure is as head coach, first-time head coach and doing an SEC program, let alone the number one school in the nation in A&M. Got his first win under his belt, series sweep. This is the weekend to build off it. They play Friday, they play Cal Poly. You got to keep building, keep compounding because a lot of us are watching kind of how his managerial style is, right? I think that's an important aspect. I mean, you're a first-year head coach in the SEC. I mean, it's going to be really crucial to watch. But then you want to talk about teams, I think, that are more on the concern side. I think of Kentucky and Auburn and Alabama. I talked to Chris about it last week and this week about how I think Alabama and Auburn are very similar teams, Lucas. You think about they both have, two studs in the lineup. Alabama, it's Justin LeBron. And then I can't remember his other name, the other guy's name at the top of my head. But you talk about just the studs that they have in the lineup. I mean, it's you got to have deeper lineups in the SEC to be able to compete. And then Auburn, they have Ike Irish who hit a walk-off to avoid getting upset by Troy, even though Troy, I think, was the underdog. They were the 24th ranked team in the country. He struggled in an opening weekend, but him and Cooper McMurray, the two studs at Auburn, but the pitching staff concerns on both sides. Bama didn't have an opening weekend. They didn't have a single starter go more than 4 innings. And then Auburn, the exact same thing almost. They didn't have any length out of their starters. Their midweek starter got shelled, didn't even go 2 innings. So the concerns around the pitching staff for both of them concern me, even though Auburn's 3-1. I mean, they've dropped one to Holy Cross, which I don't want to say is inexcusable, but just is not a standard of which Auburn, let alone an SEC program, has. And then Bama's 4-0, but I mean, they played Bradley and then a midweek, right? So they're going to get, more tests as they ramp up going to SEC play. And you got to find roles and solidify roles for guys and figure out who's the dudes on each team. And you got to have pitching staffs that step up because like I said, with Florida, like I said, with LSU, like I said, with Tennessee, all 3 top 10 teams, right, Lucas? You got to have elite pitching in the SEC and depth. You got to have starters that go deep because then think about it on a Friday night. If you get into a team's bullpen on a Friday night, that hurts them Saturday and Sunday. That plays into effect Saturday and Sunday with who's, available, who's ready to go and not overused. And those are things that, concern me for teams in the SEC is Auburn and Alabama doing that. But then, like I said as well, Kentucky, just how do you how do you follow up just last year's near Cinderella run, it felt like, for the rest of the country, not for Kentucky, but for the rest of the country, going to Omaha with a team that was projected to finish, I think, 5th in the SEC. They tied for the most wins in the SEC at 22-5. I mean, how do you follow up? They split a 2-game series because of weather to Lipscomb on the road at Lipscomb and just replacing a lot of pieces. There are a lot of pieces coming in, but Nick Mingione, Coach of the Year in 2024, rightfully so. He's got his hands full this year trying to follow up that season, and a lot of guys that are trying to fill roles to keep Kentucky in the national conversation for postseason. So a lot of interesting storylines this year, Lucas, especially coming out of opening day, I think. So it's going to be an exciting, I think, more exciting non-conference schedule in slate leading up to SEC play, which we know is going to be a gauntlet and going to be so much fun to watch.
Let me ask you a question because a lot of people were concerned about this. Florida's base running. I heard it was iffy at best. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think it's just, more of taking pride in the little things and, focusing on the things like that because, I mean, Florida, it's one of those things that can get you in trouble. And Kevin O'Sullivan's, one of the best coaches in college baseball in the country. So I think he's going to focus on buttoning that up as well. He's going to take pride in that and make sure the guys take pride in it as well. But, I mean, with Florida's power, it's going to be a lot of doubles and home runs. So as long as they don't make stupid mistakes in the base path, because those can cost you in SEC games, but this is the time to button those things up, and I believe that they will, Lucas.
You mentioned about, just some of the top guys that are in the SEC. I think this pitching lineup with what the SEC has is extremely, extremely deep. I mean, you've got a lot of young and old guys that you're going to see a lot of names being called in this upcoming draft for the MLB. Talk to me about a couple of those guys that are going to stand out going into the rest of this year. And what is one guy that went under the radar this whole weekend that you think is a guy that could be a top prospect by the time we get June for the draft.
On the pitching side or the hitting side?
Either or.
That's tough.
I know. I understand why, because we literally have only played 4 total games so far.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like a top pick this year is kind of tough. I think just like I don't want to say he's under the radar, but just someone that's going to burst on the scene this year. He's a freshman from LSU. I mean,
Schmidt.
I don't think what
Schmidt.
I mean, I just think it's one of those things. LSU is such a talented team that like does it feel like to you surprising when they have a guy that bursts on the scene out of nowhere and just has an incredible year? I mean, Tommy Tanks, they had transfer in, and he had it felt like an even bigger year after his freshman year at
I don't remember
NC State. But
a
I
freshman
think
like this coming in to LSU.
Yeah, I mean,
to really take over like that.
I think Daniel Dickinson's a huge name, and I think he's going to have a fantastic year at LSU. But I think Derek Curio, I mean, I think he's going to win freshman of the year in the SEC. I mean,
Curio came out.
I mean,
blazing.
He's batting 500. I know he's only played 4 games, but he's got a home run and 6 RBIs as a freshman, batting 500 to start the season. I mean, if that's not hot, I don't know what is. I mean, I think that's a big name I think of immediately when it comes to mind of young guys. I think Aiden King as well, pitcher at Florida. I mean, a lot of people close to the team have talked about how highly they are on him and the stuff he has, and I mean, I expect him to be I think a really big contributing piece for the Florida Gators team this year. I mean, it's just there's so many massive pieces at Florida that are going to play a big role, I think.
Maverick Rizzi might end up on an all-freshman team in the SEC as well in the pitching side. His kid's got a huge upside. He was one of the more, I wouldn't say highly heralded young freshmen that were out there in the SEC, but he went kind of under the radar, especially in LSU, because all the hype was on William Schmidt from Catholic.
Yeah. I mean, it's just – that's the thing about the SEC is, Lucas, there's so much talent on every team, it feels like. And there's a lot of freshmen that don't get to play that are uber talented, that would start, in any other conference almost, but they want to come play for a program like LSU, the pedigree that it is, a program, like Arkansas, a program like Florida, a program, like honestly half the SEC, it feels like at this point. So that's the biggest thing I like seeing is, who bursts on the scene, who makes a name for himself, and who's a season that's so memorable for a lot of people. I mean, Stephen Milam, Monster Milam did it last year. I mean, I know you're familiar with that name and just how clutch of a season it felt like he had. I mean, in Hoover alone.
I think once Milam gets comfortable, because I think he's still adjusting from going from second base to shortstop.
Yeah.
I think once he gets comfortable in that position, he's going to be a guy that could potentially turn into an all SEC performer at the end of the year.
Yeah. I mean, I'll give you another freshman arm, and I'll stick with LSU since we're talking about it. You're a nearby local. Kassan Evans. I mean, freshman arm, I mean, he was electric when I saw him pitch over the weekend. I mean, just the stuff he has as a freshman, I think was really impressive. And I think he's only going to continue to develop. And I think he's going to get a lot of quality innings as a freshman down in Baton Rouge.
Going to be fun. How about the bats from Alabama over the weekend? I mean, they came out blazing. Bryce Fowler, Justin LeBron, both combining for 21 RBIs. How are we feeling about Alabama's offense this year and how the bats are going to fare in 25?
Yeah, that's the name I was thinking of was Bryce. And it's just, like I said, I mean, Justin LeBron, I think is one of the most talented players in college baseball. I mean, especially for how undersized he is compared to, guys like, Tommy Tanks was, Dylan Cruz, Jared Jones, to give you a few names. I mean, Jack Caglione, Charlie Conn, and just those names like that. I mean, but outside of them, I mean, Brennan Norton had a really good opening weekend too. I mean, he's batting .467. I mean, he's not crushing on the RBI caliber, but I mean, he's getting on base. He's got a home run. He's got 7 hits on opening weekend. I mean, that's the thing, because the pitching, like I said, the pitching side concerns me. So the bats have to pick it up. I hate to say that because, they kind of go hand in hand and you don't want to rely on one too much. But Bryce Fowler is, I mean, he's caught my eye so far this opening series. A name I'm going to keep an eye on. I mean, talented outfielder. I mean, he's from Southern Miss. I mean, he's a JUCO guy. redshirt junior, so he's got a lot of at-bats underneath his belt. But I'm excited to see what around Justin LeBron develops, because I think he's the core and the centerpiece of this Alabama offense this year, Lucas.
So far leads the SEC in doubles this year, also second in the SEC in RBIs, just one behind his counterpart, Bryce Fowler. I mean, when you look at where they're going to be at the end of this year, what's expectation versus reality for Alabama this upcoming year? I know they're not a top 25 team. They're probably not going to make Omaha this year. But I think if you can get past the regional, I definitely wouldn't be surprised if that does end up happening.
Yeah, I'd say making it super regional would be a successful year for Alabama. I, at this moment, don't expect it to happen just because of the lack of firepower of arms compared to a lot of other SEC schools.
Yeah.
I mean, I expect them to go to a regional. I think, I don't want to say at minimum, but I think there is a chance they don't make it to a regional. And I say that because of how deep the SEC is this year, Lucas. And obviously you can attest to that as well. 16 teams. You bring in an Oklahoma club who's been to Omaha recently, and then the Texas, the power that they have, the recruits that they have, the coaching staff that they have, the pedigree of a program that it is, and there's no divisions. You know, I haven't looked specifically at, Alabama's schedule compared to others. I know Texas has an easier schedule than Texas A&M for sure, and a lot of other programs. I mean, Texas plays at Missouri, and at Oklahoma. So, there's worse road games and road series to play, but I think Alabama making it to regional. Yes, they did last year, but I think making it to regional with what I see right now would be a good season, and where I have them projected in the SEC, Lucas.
I think a big matchup that's going to determine what happens to them over the course of this year, March 5th against Troy. I think that's a matchup that you definitely have to look forward to. Troy, we talked earlier a couple weeks ago, and you talked about how Troy has been. I think that this is a Troy team that was competitive with Auburn. I think that they could have won that game near the end, but I think that if you can get the bats continue to fire them up, I think this is an Alabama team that could definitely make a run once SEC tournament play starts, and maybe steal a win or two out in regionals and make it really competitive.
You're going to need more depth from starting pitchers than what I've seen so far. That's just the biggest. I know I keep saying it, but it's because it plays so much into the games, the SEC. Like, think about it. If you're playing, in a regional, you're going to need 4 starters. You really are if you want to go deep in a regional. So we'll see. Anyway, it's early though, so there is optimism, I think.
Like you mentioned already, Harrison, both them and Auburn struggled coming out of the gate, especially in the first inning. You surrender 3 against Bradley in the opening game. You surrendered a couple of hits early on in that game, and it kind of sets the tone for what the weekend was like. Luckily, you were able to recover from it. But still, like you mentioned, Bama's got a long way to go in the pitching department. Auburn's got a long ways to go in the pitching department. And I think that's what you want to see from there on, is just consistency. Consistency was one thing with LSU. It was, we go back to them for a little bit. Pitching last year was just mind-boggling to me. I talked to a couple of LSU guys last year about this. They said that was one of the biggest problems, was consistency coming out of the bullpen. You could never get anything throughout the first 2 or 3 innings from your Friday and Saturday pitchers. And then when Sunday came, it was just like, all right, we'll just throw this kid out there because we know Sunday slates aren't really our best slates. So what do you think changed over the offseason? I know that they have their new strength and conditioning coach who has been phenomenal this year, but how deeply improved really is this LSU pitching room?
Yeah, I think it's, there's a lot of talented players that they recruit, right? They have also one of the best pitching labs in the country at LSU. You could say it's low-hanging fruit saying, look what Paul Skeens was able to do there. Uber talented player, but he will even rave, and he has preached about how much it was a benefit to him being able to focus on pitching in a lab, in a facility like LSU, and just, how, he's not having to do, military things as, at LSU like he was at Air Force, but just the pitching lab and how he was able to develop and so fast. Then you work with, a guy like Nate Yeske. I mean, an elite pitching coach. I mean, he's in year 2 now, and he's worked at 4 different schools. He's worked at Oregon State, Arizona, and Texas A&M. I know that for sure. I mean, he's worked 18 years, I think, or 20 years in college baseball, if not baseball as a whole. But I mean, he is got to be one of the top pitching coaches, I think, in the SEC as well. I mean, there's a lot of really good pitching coaches. I mean, I could ripple them off if you wanted me to, but I think he is a very, very talented in pitching coaching, gets a lot out of his players and just really develops pitchers too. I think that's a big thing, and a big thing that goes under the radar in college baseball is development.
Who do you think is a dark horse going to Omaha this upcoming year for 2025 in the SEC?
In the SEC, dark horse, I like this question, and I know Chris is going to really enjoy if he hears this, who I pick, because I think it's Mississippi State. I think they have the talent. And I think that they have, I know you haven't replaced 2 starting pitchers, 2 elite starting pitchers they had, but I think they have the talent too. And like I said, pitching coaches, Justin Parker at Mississippi State is an elite pitching coach. And what he's been able to do with the staff and the players he's had at Mississippi State so far has been unbelievably impressive. And we know Mississippi State's a baseball school. I think that they are a dark horse in the SEC to go to Omaha if there's a team in that's kind of that middle of the pack so far, as I see it right now.
Look, Chris Lemoyne to me is still one of the elite coaches out there in college baseball.
Yeah.
You're talking about the unbelievable run that they had in 2021, and then just the seasons that they've had apart from that, just having replaced so many studs. And I think so far from what you're looking at, is this the best one that they've had so far since 21?
I think it's too early to tell, to be honest with you. And I went Mississippi State as well because I think I wouldn't consider picking Texas a dark horse. But
not really.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're super talented. They're super regional, esque for sure.
Yeah,
I
have them potentially being a dark horse to Omaha.
But I mean, like you said, I think Chris Lemoyne is a really, really good coach, and I think he proved that last year with just a big bounce back season and getting a lot out of his players. And, kind of trying to get back to that, 2019, short in 2020, 2021 teams that as insanely talented as they were, and just get back to that because that's what Mississippi State is trying to consistently be, super regional Omaha caliber ball clubs.
When you look at Mississippi State and what they've done at the bat, one thing that they have lacked is just finding another guy to replace just Star. You talk about what Tanner Allen did in 2021 and what he was able to do throughout that entirety of the season. It seems like Mississippi State has kind of lacked the bats ever since he's left. Who's that guy that can replace, despite it being 4 seasons since Allen left Starkville?
So replace, I don't know if is it necessarily the right word.
Or I should say, I wouldn't say replace, but more like
fill that role.
I wouldn't necessarily find a role that Allen was.
First person that comes to mind is Hunter Hines. And just the senior first baseman. He's kind of, I think, honestly, the kind of core and nucleus of this Bulldog offense. He's one of the most veteran guys there. He's had a ton of clutch ABs. And he's got the power. I think if he locks in, can have a great year for himself and a great last year in that uniform and playing in the SEC. But you got to fill roles, like I said, Dakota Jordan, and just one of the most uber talented players that I've seen play in person. And you have guys like Dylan Cupp, who's coming back from injury. You have Ace Reese, who's a really talented third baseman. You got Bryce Chance, another senior outfielder. You got a lot of talent there. It's just putting the pieces together and putting together a lot of quality at bats. And there's a lot of talent in this team that can do that. It's just a matter of, when you step in the box, executing. So it can definitely happen. And that's why I think they're a dark horse, is because that middle of the pack, they can really have a great season and put all the pieces together offensively and on the pitching staff side wise, or they can just, kind of get lost in that middle of the pack if things aren't clicking consistently throughout SEC play, Lucas.
I'll talk about this little matchup for the weekend, a little series. Number 5 Arkansas going up against number 22 TCU. Kind of odd that we're seeing a top 25 battle this early in college baseball season.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's because it's one of those. It's in a tournament. I think I don't want to say it's odd as much.
Because it's in Arlington.
I think they're playing they're playing in Arlington. That's correct.
Okay.
But it's one of those things. I mean, this is a great time, and I talked to Chris and other people that cover college baseball about it. Like, this is a time when you basically, instead of playing non-power 5, just these non-conference opponents, you're playing teams that you're going to see in a regional, and I think you have to treat it like that too. I mean, you treat it like a regional because you're going on the road. You're playing teams that are, it's all neutral site, but you're playing teams that you're probably going to see in the postseason, like a TCU, maybe a Kansas State. Like, I mean, now you're playing Michigan too, who Michigan opening day upsetted number 5 UVA, who was my ACC team to go to Omaha and honestly win it. I mean, if there's a team that's not SEC ball club that's going to win the national championship this year, I have my cards on the Cavaliers in Virginia. I mean, just as stacked and as deep as they are, in Michigan went and upset them. I mean, so you're looking at 3 really good tests for Arkansas with, the struggles they have, and kind of, I don't want to say the reputation that they have of struggling on offense and just elite pitching factory, but, you win a 3-2 close game against Washington State on opening day, and then you blow them out by, I think, 10 or 12 runs the next game. Then you win, a close one, a 3-run game, and then you blow them out in the 4th one because they ended up playing a 4-game series ending on Monday. But, I want to see it up against a little bit better competition. And, because, Lucas, the biggest thing, and I think solely the reason why that Arkansas did not go to Omaha last year was because of the hitting. And I think most people would say, obviously, of course that's the reason. But when you look at the stats, Lucas, as dominant as their pitching was, led by Hagen Smith, an absolutely elite pitcher, I think will be remembered for a long time in Fayetteville. Their batting average, Lucas, was second to last in the SEC last season, ahead of only Missouri. Is that going to get you to Omaha? No. I mean, if Arkansas is even middle of the pack of the SEC, batting averaging go across the board, statistically on the hitting side, you should expect them at minimum a super regional, if not Omaha. I mean, with how good of arms that they have every single year on the mound, starting and in the bullpen. I mean, last year, if they're batting 500 in the SEC across the board offensively, they're in Omaha, no doubt.
Is this what that has been hurting them ever since their debacle in 2017?
The 2018 drop against Oregon State.
Yeah, 2018. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's kind of like a pitching factory, I guess. Again, I think
it feels like a curse at this point.
Dave Van Horn. I don't know if I want to say that, but it feels like it feels like a subconscious, just like, oh, every Arkansas fan, don't bring it up, don't talk about it. I remember it. I remember exactly where I was, and whatnot. But it just feels like it's a continuing concern every year for them, which I don't know if you consider that good or bad, that it's just one thing, but that's half the game, hitting. So for me, it's just like, this year you think like you get a healthy Kendall Diggs too, who's been battling just injuries all, over a year, it feels like. I mean, even though he played in most of the games last season, battling injuries, right? You get a healthy Kendall Diggs. You got Brent Arundel, who's I think going to be a core piece of that offense and just a power bat in that lineup. So, I mean, they have the talent to do it. They're going to host let's say they make it the postseason, they'll probably host a regional. You get that home field advantage, but anything can happen in the postseason. It's about, winning when it matters, and that's winning the postseason, Lucas.
You talk about winning in the postseason, and I think this weekend and just the next 2 weeks in Arlington is going to really define what happens in the postseason. You're going to get your first look at it. By the way, our boys on Instagram looking at him. If Ty Richardson, if you're in here, what's happening, bro? How are we feeling about Arkansas this year? Ty was actually supposed to come on yesterday to talk some Arkansas football, but could this be the year legitimately for Arkansas that this is an Omaha team if the bats are hot?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, they have the pitching to do it. You have a starting pitcher in Gabe Gaggle, and then you have a Zach Root, who is one of the best, I think, arms in the transfer portal they got from ECU, and just the talent that he brings and the arsenal that he has. I mean, and then they have a lot of great pieces, and you have Will McIntyre in the bullpen again, who feels like one of the most veteran arms in the country. I mean, and they're going to continue to pump out, elite arms in the SEC from that bullpen. So, I mean, there's no I don't want to say there's no reason not to, but there's no reason they can't. And it feels like the Razorback fans, their expectation and standard is getting back to Omaha. And I don't want to say avenging, but riding the ship and winning a national championship. And to do it under a head coach and just a legend like Dave Van Horn is, I mean, it would be great for Arkansas fans, obviously, but I think great for college baseball as well.
Last one for you, Harrison, before we let you go, my friend. This weekend, Amegy Bank for the College Baseball World Series. Bunch of matchups. TCU, Michigan, Michigan, K-State, Michigan, Arkansas, Arkansas, K-State, Arkansas, TCU, K-State, TCU. Which matchup do we need to pay attention the most to for this upcoming weekend around college baseball?
I think that's a tough one to pick. I think it's oddly enough a tough one to pick because, Friday against Kansas State at 8 p.m., they're going to play, and they're going to, it's going to be a night game, right? Friday night game. Friday Night Lights you're going to have Gabe Gake on the mound against a solid Kansas State team. Saturday night game against TCU, you're going to have Zach Root on the mound. Sunday, you're playing a good Michigan team who beat UVA in Puerto Rico, but the game's at 11 a.m. I think that's going to be the sleeper game of this is that Sunday game, what's left in the bullpen for both teams. But I think the main one is going to be TCU Saturday night. I just think TCU is one of the, top two teams in kind of expectations to win the Big 12 this year. And I think it's going to be a very, very good test to see where their offense is at. I think it will be the entire weekend, but especially against TCU.
Hey, we mentioned about Justin LeBron earlier in our broadcast. How about this play?
His last plate appearance in the fourth.
Yeah.
LeBron, there's one.
I mean, like I said, just the talent that he has on, the tools that he has in his bag. I mean, he's such a good offensive player, but when you have a shortstop and a commander that can make defensive plays like that, save runs in innings, not let innings linger on, keep the pitch count down for your pitcher. That's a huge, huge asset to have in the SEC, Lucas.
Harrison Fant, SEC baseball analyst with SEC Unfiltered. Harrison, pleasure having you on, my friend. As usual, we'll chop it up again sometime soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
All right, let's get into this one. ESPN's role in the college football playoff. By the way, thank you, Harrison, once again for hopping on. Check him out on SEC Unfiltered. Make sure you follow him on X at Fantavious9. All right, ESPN's role in the college football playoff. This is what goes on. Another important entity involved in the conversation is the company paying $1.3 billion annually to the college football playoff for the rights to broadcast the playoff from 26 to 31. As one power broker put it, you are going to alienate part of the country because they have expressed to at least some college leaders apprehension about a format that provides such lopsided automatic success. Folks, they're worried about this. ESPN is worried about this because they're afraid some of their games are going to get broadcasted on other networks as well. There's not to be expected any new television revenue if the field is expanded to 14 as the figures included in the memorandum. If the field is expanded to 16, however, it may require negotiations from the leagues for more revenue because of more TV time and because of more teams that are going to be involved. So that means you got to dig some more out of your pocket. They're already clogging TV windows during the third week because with a 14-team one, you would feature two more first-round teams during the third week of December when the college football playoff competes against the NFL, which, by the way, the CFP wins every time. A 16-team bracket would have needed an additional 4 more home games, which includes 8 first-round games instead of the 4. I told you guys yesterday about the bracket, and I said we would have a 1 versus 16, 2, 15, 3, 14, et cetera, et cetera. I told you this was going to happen, and guess what? It is going to happen. So here's the ramifications because of this. Administrators are requesting more revenue, perhaps as much or more as than $5 million a school annually to play an extra league game. Because of this, and because of things that you're seeing with the spring game and the threat of that being canceled, it's because, hey, you know, because you're getting TV revenue, the coaches are getting it, players are getting it, and even even the school is getting it alongside. That's a big deal when it comes to this. A ninth SEC game would then set in motion a scheduling agreement with the Big Ten, would pit the SEC and Big Ten games against one another in annual games to be sold as a separate TV package. So we're going to see an SEC Big Ten challenge either on CBS or they're going to be on Fox or they're going to be on ESPN. So we're going to see them flip-flop every year or so for this to happen. And I'm telling you, it's going to work out just fine. You just be patient because it's going to be just fine. Continuing on. So you would get matchups like a Texas, Ohio State regularly, an LSU, Oregon, a Georgia, Michigan, and it could be worth annually well into the 8 figures for the leagues to presumably split. Oh my gosh. If leaders get the postseason right, this is according to Commissioner Tony Petitti from Big Ten Media Days. His league and others could then have the ability to play stronger non-conference matchups. This is exactly what college football has been wanting. That's what's been lacking recently. So you have that to go along with. So here's what the revenue sharing would look, what they want to accomplish. You want to change the postseason to guarantee your spots, assure the SEC moves to 9 games, and strike the scheduling agreement. But there's a fourth step too that involves each power conference needing to establish the way in which they qualify teams for the AQ berths. So conference championship games likely become less valuable, and a reimagined championship weekend may feature conference play-in games for the auto berth. So you're going to see if we have a tie for 4th or something like that, you're going to see something like this happen on a regular basis. Could the SEC and the Big Ten, if guaranteed 4 spots, put their 3rd best team against the 6th, the 4th team against the 5th team, and on campus playing games to the CFP? Would they advance their top 2 seeds automatically into the CFP, or would they still play for a title game? Or would they match their top seed against their 8th place finisher? So, folks, there's a lot of moving pieces that have to go along with this. And it has to be correlated with everybody involved. So we'll just have to see. I'm not sure, but we'll see. But I love this quote from Greg Sankey. He said, when we ended that set of meetings in January of 2022 without a decision, I was clear. If you are going to walk away from this opportunity, we are going to reevaluate our position on format, revenue sharing, and governance. Folks, this is happening in 2026, and it just proves to show you the Big Ten and the SEC have a firm grasp on the college football playoff and the NCAA. That's why I say the NCAA is going to be dissolved by the time we get to the 2030s, and that's why we're not going to have the NCAA trying to reach their hand into everything that these conferences are trying to do. And they won't exist by the time we get there. We'll have a brand new league. We'll have a commissioner involved, and we'll have almost an NFL JV type of league instead of the NCAA. They're losing their grasp on the athletes. So if this seeding would have happened in last year's playoffs, the top 4 seeds would have been number 1 Oregon, number 2 Georgia, number 3 Texas, and number 4 Penn State. So instead of all the re-ranking BS that we had, we'd have a lot more of reality. We wouldn't have in all these re-ranking and stuff. Arizona State, who was the 4th seed in the current format as the Big 12 title champs, would have been seeded 12th. Boise State, who was the 3rd seed, would have been seeded 9th. The 8 versus 9 game would have featured Boise State versus Indiana instead of Ohio State versus Tennessee. I think this is going to work out perfectly, in my opinion, because I think this is perfect for college football. I think this is exactly what you wanted to accomplish. And I love the format. I really do. And I genuinely am astonished that we got to see this. It was really good. So here would have been your games. If we would have gone to a 16, let's say we're going to a 14 or a 16 team, a 14 team, we would have Oregon and Georgia getting first round buys. Texas would play Ole Miss. Penn State would play Miami. Arizona State would play Notre Dame. Ohio State would play Alabama, Tennessee and SMU, and then Indiana and Boise State. If we would have had a 16 team, then Oregon would have played Clemson. Georgia would have played South Carolina. Texas would have played Ole Miss, and then everything's just the same with Texas, and or from 3 to 14. Just the top 2 would be changing. So I am in favor more of a top. I don't think auto buys should be I'm glad we're reformatting the whole thing, because this top 4 seeds get a bye and the re-rankings are a complete disaster for college football. I thought it was a disaster last year, and I thought it was a joke. I thought it was unbelievable that we got to see this, and it was unbelievable that this even happened. So we'll see what happens for the next couple of years, but until then, guys, I'm this close. We're this close to finally some sort of Super League, and we're not going to see any more of the NFL involved, or no more of the of what you see in the NCAA system anymore. And it's a good thing that we do. All right. Y'all have a good weekend. Y'all have a great day. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Y'all have a great rest of the